Good afternoon to all of you. The idea of my presentation is to give an overview which are the main rules that apply to PRIMA calls in the financial issues. And in the last part, I will give you how PRIMA will pay to the participants and in how do we request the reports. And next, please. Next. So we'll see which are the eligible costs that you can submit once you prepare the proposal. On the other side, which is an eligible cost. The third part of the presentation will be the concept of third parties, if they are allowed and what kind of third parties you can introduce in your consortium. And the last part, which will be the report and payment request. Next, please. So first of all, and before going into detail to what is an eligible cost, and as Octavi and my colleagues have already mentioned, I will explain the Section 1 rules, okay? Section 1 rules because PRIMA calls on Section 2 follows the national rules of each country, okay? The second important thing is that, and Octavi has already mentioned, we stick to H2020 rules. Even though that the call is launched in 2021 and Horizon Europe has already started, we stick to H2020 rules, okay? Okay, eligible cost. We have 5 categories that you can allocate your cost. The first one, and later I will explain one by one, is the direct personal cost. The second one is the direct cost of subcontracting. The third one is direct cost of providing financial support to third parties. The fourth one, other direct costs, and the last one, indirect costs. So here, the main difference that you should know is what is a direct cost and what is an indirect cost. The direct cost is all the costs that are directly linked to the action, okay? And they can only be attributed to it. And the direct cost is the other way around. It's cost not directly linked to the action and cannot be attributed to it. For instance, indirect cost is the fund cost, and a direct cost is the person who works on the action. Next, please. So there are 3 types of conditions or type of costs that you can use when you prepare when you justify the cost. The first category, which is the most common one, is the actual cost, which basically they have to be according to the Annex 1. They must fulfill all the national law and the laws of your organization. They must be reasonable and justified, and they must be justified during the period of the action, okay, which is set out in the Article 3. The second option that you can use is the unit cost, which is the number of actual units must comply with the following conditions, okay? They must be actually used or produced in the period of the action. They must be necessarily identified and verifiable, and be calculated as follow, using the formula number of actual units per amount per unit. And the third category, or the third option that you can use to justify the eligible costs are the flat rates, that we use it to calculate the indirect costs, which is a flat rate of 25% of the total eligible direct costs. We will see through an example how to calculate them. Next, please. So direct personal cost, this is the most important cost on PRIMA actions. In average, it represents approx between 60 and 70% of the total budget, okay? If we see the data of the last 3 years. So the standard case is the persons who are hired by the beneficiary via an employment contract, okay? This cost includes the pays, the payroll, plus the social security contributions paid by the organization. But you can use other cases under this category, which are natural persons who are hired directly via a contract, if they fulfill these 3 conditions. They have a hierarchical dependence with the beneficiary, the result belongs to the beneficiary, and the costs are similar that those employees would be unemployed by the institution. And a third option could be employees of a third party seconded to the beneficiary. Next, please. So how do we calculate them? So we use this formula, which is hour works per hourly rate, okay? The hour works must be recorded in time record. This is very important. So all the people who work on the action must record the time allocated to each task, and these time records must be signed by the person plus his or her supervisor, and the hourly rate, okay? In the next slide, we will see how to calculate the hourly rate. So how to determine the hourly rate? As a general cost, you use the actual cost, which is defined in the model grant agreement. But you can also use unit cost, okay? If your institution works in unit cost, you can use this accounting practice that is being used in your organization. Or the third option as unit cost is if you are an SME owner without a salary, then H2020 rules states that you must fix an hourly rate that you will find it in the annex of the grant agreement to calculate the cost for this SME owner. Okay, next please. So the hourly rate, it's an easy calculation between personal cost on the denominator and in the denominator, the productive hours. So the personal cost includes the salaries, the social security contribution paid by the organization, and other tax and costs that may arise from your national law or the employment contract. The productive hours are the number of hours that an employee can work on the organization according to its labor agreement. And if it's not clear or the labor agreement is not well defined, you can use 3 different options that are described here. And the standard one is 1,720 hours per year. So then you can get the hourly rate. Next, please. When you will report the direct personal cost, you should take in consideration the annual hourly rate has to be calculated once the financial year is closed, okay? So following this example, that this reporting period, which starts the 1st of October 2019 and ends the 31 March 2021, the hourly rate of 19 and 20 is for each year. But the hourly rate from 2021, the first 3 months, you must use the hourly rate of the year before. In this case, the 2020. This is very important when you calculate your budget. Next, please. The second category of eligible costs are the direct costs of subcontracting. Subcontracting is allowed in PRIMA actions. You must declare them in actual cost. And secondly, they must be described in the Annex 1, which is the full proposal of 50 pages, okay? The other direct cost is the third category of eligible costs, and the most common ones is the travel cost to attend to the meetings, such as kickoff meetings, meetings of among all the members of the consortium. The equipment, okay, is it allowed to buy assets for the action? But you can only account and report the depreciation costs according to the use of the asset during the action, okay? And you must use this formula. You have to calculate the acquisition cost multiplied by the annual depreciation according to the national law, multiply for the use of the action, and multiply for the days that you use this asset in the action, okay? Also, cost of renting and leasing are allowed. And also in other direct costs, there are the goods and services that might be purchased during the action. It's not necessary to detail them in the Annex 1. Next, please. The fourth category and the last one is indirect cost. So we have said that it's a flat rate of 25% of the eligible direct cost, from which are excluded the cost of subcontracting. So in this example, we will see how we can calculate them. So this is a public university which has a 100,000 personal cost, 20,000 for subcontracting, and 10,000 for other direct costs. So the total eligible direct cost is 1,030,000, the sum of the three categories. But when we calculate the eligible indirect costs, we only consider personal costs and other direct costs. That's why the eligible indirect cost is 27,500 euros. So if we sum the two amounts, the total eligible cost for this partner would be 1,057,500 euros. Okay, next, please. So we have seen all the eligible costs. But we have ineligible costs. There are costs that can be rejected if you submit when you report to us, such as doubtful debts, currency exchange losses. Here I remind you that PRIMA always pays in euros. So if your currency suffers exchange variations during the action, you cannot justify them. Reckless expenditure or the deductible VAT. Okay, all the costs incurred before the start of the action are not eligible. All the costs must be justified since the first day of the action. Next, please. Okay. As my colleague Fabrice has explained, in the budget, when you submit in stage 1, you will provide us an amount. But on stage 2, you should detail us, among all the categories, the budget per partner and per each category. This budget is a budget, okay? And this budget can be changed during the action, okay? We don't like to do a lot of changes during the action, but if need be, there are some changes that can be done during the action. In any case, if you are selected for funding, we will explain you how is the procedure and how are the amendments, if need be, in case you apply for it. Okay. Next, please. This is how the budget looks like. So on the top, you see all the categories which I have explained for all the eligible direct costs and indirect costs. On the left side, you introduce the partner, and if need be, the third party link it to the partner. Okay. Here it's important that if you have a linked third party, it deserves a line for its own budget. Okay. And here I will also to point out the importance of the reimbursement rate. Okay. So as most of our calls are e-action, if you are working in a profit organization, the maximum reimbursement rate is 70%. Okay, so please, once you prepare the budget, take in consideration the percentage that you can apply for the reimbursement, okay, of all your costs. Next, please. So third parties are allowed in PRIMA calls. So the concept of third party, it's a legal entity which carries out work of the action, but they don't sign the grant agreement, okay? And we have two types of third parties. The first one are the third parties directly carrying out part of the work, and they must be described and included in the Annex 1, which is the description of the action, the full document. And the second category is the other third parties providing resources, goods, to services to the beneficiaries which are already in the partnership. And in the next slide, you see the articles which apply in the both categories. On the left side, you see the ones who carry out part of the work, which have subcontractors and linked third parties, and the article. And on the right side, the providing resources, which are contracts or use of in-kind contributions. Okay. Next, please. Here is a chart where you can see to define and which is the criteria to identify if you are speaking about a linked third party or a contractor, and which are the characteristics that apply to each category. For instance, contractor, that as we have already mentioned, they don't work on the action and they provide resources and services. and what is eligible is the price, okay? And the Article 10, which is the one it's described in the Model Grant Agreement, and the best value for money to avoid conflict of interest, okay? Next, please. The last slide, it's how PRIMA pays and report and how to be submitted to PRIMA, okay? So once the GA, the grant agreement, is signed, PRIMA can pay up to 30 days the first installment, which is 60% as a pre-financing payment, okay? I remind you that PRIMA only pays to the coordinator, and the coordinator splits the payment among the partners according to the consortium agreement that they already been signed by all of them, okay? My colleague Julia will later explain how the grant agreement works. The first report will be at the midterm of the action, and it could be 1 year and a half, 2 years, depends on how long it will take your action. And you should submit a periodic report, a technical report, and a financial report. So the partners and the coordinator must submit this information, and this period takes approx 3 months to submit and to check and to prove all the information is valid. Once we approve, PRIMA can pay up to 30% of the total grant amount, and at the end of the action, you report a final report, a technical report, and again, a financial report. And if need be, and if all the costs are eligible, we can pay the 10%, which is remaining of the payment of the balance of the total grant amount. So finally, and next please, I just recommend to keep calm and follow the rules, and good luck for your applications. Thank you.